This is the lensometer, and this is what we use every day in practice for verifying the prescription on a pair of glasses or for marking them up for edging. Here we have the eyepiece, which we look through, and we need to adjust for our individual eyes. Everyone's focusing is slightly different. We use this to change the axis on the reticule, graticule. This is for marking, center of a lens. This is the prism compensation drum. Glasses plate or lens plate. This is to hold your glasses level. Here we have the lens stop. The glasses go up against the lens stop. This is the power drum. You can see the powers are written on here. This is where we read off. And we have the axis wheel here at the back. And if we look through that magnifying glass, we can see it a little bit better. There it says 165. Okay, perfect. And right here is the switch to switch it on. It's going to be somewhere different depending on each lensometer. So not all lensometers look like this, and the target in each is slightly different, but you'll get to know your own lensometer. But let's talk you through how to use it. Back here we have this adjuster here, which will adjust the height on the lensometer, because everyone is a different size. Some people are taller, some people are smaller. Sometimes the desk is higher, sometimes it's lower. And if you're going to do a lot of lensometry in practice, you'll need to adjust the height so you don't get a sore back. Okay, so before we get the eyepiece focused, what we're going to do is just put a piece of white paper in here up against the backstop. And this just provides more contrast to make it easier for us to see the graticule and get the eyepiece into focus. Okay, so you can see the graticule there. We've got our black circular lines, and we've got a horizontal line. I'm just twisting the eyepiece here, and you'll see that it'll kind of come in and out of focus. And basically the object is to focus this as best you can for your eyes. Now if someone else comes along and looks in, they might see it blurry. So every time you use a lensometer, you're going to focus it so it's perfectly in focus for your eyes before you turn it on. Let me just show you. If I take the piece of paper out, it gets darker. So that piece of paper just improves the contrast when we're doing this part. Before we start, we're going to set our power drum here to 0. So let's set it all the way to 0. Okay? That's set to 0. Good. And then we're going to look in here, and we should see our sphere lines and our sill lines nice and sharp. If they're not nice and sharp, we need to compensate for that, but we'll save that for another day. We'll come back to that. I'm going to show you how to measure the power on a pair of glasses. So the first thing you want to do is make sure our lenses are nice and clean. I'm going to use a lens cloth to make sure they're clean. If they're not clean, it makes it harder to see. I'm going to put my glasses in like this, up against the lens stop. I'm going to move the table up to make sure my glasses are flat. Notice how both sides are flat on this table here. Once I have it in position, I'm going to release the holder here. That'll keep my glasses in place. Okay, then I'm going to look through my eyepiece, and I'm going to bring, before I do that, I'm going to put this way back to plus, so bring it to a high plus. I'm going to look in my eyepiece, and I'm going to slowly turn the eyepiece until I start to see the sphere lines or sill lines come into focus. Once I see those come into focus, I'm going to twist my axis wheel to make sure that it is the sphere lines that come into focus. Stop. Okay, now my sphere lines are in focus. That's going to be my sphere power. So I read the sphere power off the power drum, And you can see here it's greater than 0, it's plus, it's not as much as 1, halfway between 0 and 1, it's 0.50, or half. It's a half a diopter. So our sphere was 0.50. The other thing that I know is my axis. If we look at the axis wheel here, can you see the 100 in there? It reads 100. That's my axis. I'm going to show you how to write that down in a minute. So I have my sphere and my axis. But we could see that the sill line was not in focus. So now I'm going to look in here again, and I'm going to turn this until I get my sill line into focus. Okay. And now I have my sill line in focus. Okay, so now I have my sill lines in focus, and then we're just going to read the power here. So we've got 0, it's minus, so it's -1, and it's between 1 and 2, but it's not halfway, it's just a quarter way. So it's 1 minus 1.25 is my cylinder line. Now that is not my cylinder as I write the prescription, that's the actual power in that part of the lenses. So I'm going to show you how to write that down. So remember our sphere was plus 0.50. The cylinder, the lines were clear at minus 1.25, and my axis was 100. Our cylinder line, I'm not going to write it in here, it's going to write it here, was at minus 1.25. Our cylinder is the difference between these two. How do we get from plus 0.50 to minus 1.25? Down for our cylinder is the distance between those two. Where do we travel? How much do we travel to get from plus 0.50 down to minus 1.25? Well, let's see. Here's plus 0.50, so we went 0.50 plus another 1 plus another 1 plus another 0.25, which in total makes 1.75. And we went from plus to minus. We moved the drum away from us, which is minus. So that's our cylinder. So we write that down here. Our cylinder is minus 1.75. And we can read our axis off the axis wheel. It's the same, hasn't changed because we didn't move our axis wheel. It's 100. The sphere is a true power. It's the actual power of the lens in that meridian. Where we ended up on the wheel was the other true power. The cylinder is a direction to get from one true power to the other true power.